Armor in Escape from Tarkov can be a very confusing topic for both new and veteran players because there are so many different classes and types of armors that sometimes it's just hard to keep up with all of them. With BSG pushing for a complete overhaul of armor, I think it's safe to say that armor as we know it will be changed forever. But future changes doesn't help answer the burning question that I know you might be asking yourself right now. What armors should I be using at this point in the wipe? So today I'm going to be showing you guys 13 armors you should be using at level 3 traders. Alright, so jumping straight into this. POV, you just hit level 3 Ragman. You finally unlocked some good armor. What do you choose? Because if we're being honest, there are a lot of options here. So basically everything that I'm going to be showing you guys today is going to be on Ragman level 3 except for one of them, and we'll get to that. But I'm going to be starting out with class 4 and then we'll move into class 5. Keep in mind that any price that I tell you guys is going to be at the time of this recording. You could watch this video 2 months from now and it might be completely different. So if you're interested in this kind of stuff, you might want to jump on it very quickly. All right, so starting out with class 4, the first one that I have for you guys is going to be the Interceptor OTV. This is a class 4 armor, and really the only downside to it is the fact that it's ceramic. So as a general rule, any armor other than ceramic is going to repair very well, so keep that in mind for this video. But when it comes to ceramic, you're probably only going to get 1 to 2 uses out of it, so just keep that in mind. This one comes in at about 93k, and it's a pretty good bang for buck, but one thing that you can do is hop on over here to Peacekeeper. I believe it is level 2, and he has a trade for 2 of these maps. If you look them up, they usually range between 30 and 40k. So even at 40k, you're getting this thing for 80k, which is already 13,000 cheaper than what Ragman sells it for. So I've run this armor quite a bit. It's decent. It's lightweight, movement penalties, turn speed, stuff like that. I don't know the exact math and science behind all of this, but what I do know is when it comes to low numbers like this, -4, -1, -2, you're not really going to notice stuff like that in game. I personally just don't really pay too much attention to these, and they don't really matter unless you're getting into stuff like these bigger class 5s or even the big class 6s like the Zabralo. So the OTV for me is a pretty good low budget class 4 armor. I believe it offers thorax and stomach, so that's good. And for about 80 to 95k, you can have one of these and you might be able to get 2 runs out of it. Again, that is the downside to ceramic. Moving on from that, we're going to go down to the Banshee. So this is an armored rig, and if you take a look, it has a pretty decent amount of space in it. You've got the 1x3, so you can run 40 rounders if that's your thing. It's a small rig, 3x3, so you know, if you find one of these out in raid, you can take it, fill it up with stuff, and have a decent rig to use later on. But the downside to it being small and having this space inside of it is that people will more than likely take it. So this trade is going to be for 1 VHS and 1 vase, and depending on the time of day, you can find both of these for pretty cheap, usually around 40k. So that puts you right around 70 to 80k for one of these rigs, and it's not bad for a class 4. It's 6.9 kg, so it's super light, only offers thorax protection, and the modifiers are fairly low. I really like running this rig. It's super budget, super nice. Definitely would recommend it to you guys. Moving on from that, we're going to go straight over to the Strandhog. Now, I like this one because sometimes it can be super budget and you can get it for as low as 60k. Obviously, it's a class 4. The movement speed modifiers are very low, and this is one of the lightest armored rigs that you can buy. It's a decent rig. The inside of it has plenty of space. Again, you've got the 1x3, so if you want to run 40 rounders, you can do that. You got a 2x2, so if you want to run a drum mag, you can do that also. But as far as the trade is concerned, if you want to get it for around 60k, you're going to have to craft these Corduras in the hideout. One Cordura costs about 8k to craft, and then you've got your sewing kit here. Usually these are between 20 and 25. And then you got 1 vodka, which you can also craft these in the hideout. I usually just buy them off of here. Typically, you'll find them for less than 20k, so on a good day, you can get these things for about 60k, and it is a very good lightweight rig with some decent armor protection. I believe this one also is stomach and thorax. It only has 45 armor points, which is the only downfall of it, but it's a decent rig for the money. Moving on from the Strand Hog, we got one of my personal favorites right here. It's going to be the A&A Tactical M1 plate carrier. Again, class 4, covers the thorax and the stomach, 8.3 kilograms, and the modifiers are pretty low. What I like about this one is it is essentially free to run. So what I mean by that is the trade is 4 Aquamaris and 1 Kvass. So what I do is I will either find in raid or buy the Aquamaris and the Kvasses, use them between raids to drink, get them down to 1, and then trade for one of these. I got my money's worth out of drinking all of this, and then I just trade the leftovers for a pretty good class 4 rig. What I like about this one is it has 2 2x2 slots. So if you're a drum mag enjoyer, you can put 2 of them babies in there and be good to go. But overall, I really like this one because I hate saying it's essentially free because you guys seem to not like that so much. But if you really think about it, it's basically free. Come on. So this is one of the ones that I would highly recommend running if you're into class 4 right now. It's got 65 armor points, which is pretty high for a class 4, and it's just a decent rig, and I run this one all the time. Moving on from that, we've got another one of my favorites. That's going to be the TV110. So I like this one because the barter is really cheap. If you craft the bleach and craft the shampoo, super cheap. The only downside is now for whatever reason, the shampoos are extremely expensive. When I was crafting these things, they were only going between 10 and 13k. So it didn't really make sense to sell the shampoos. It made more sense to use them in a trade. But if you craft everything in the hideout, you're going to be getting this thing for around 100k, which is not bad for a class 4 armor. The only downside, it is thorax only, and it is kind of heavy at 10.3 kilograms. Inside of this thing, this is an absolutely huge rig. You got 1x3s, 2x2s, you got everything you could possibly need. This is just a great all-around rig, and I use this a lot, but I've kind of shied away from the armors that don't offer stomach protection. So if that's something that you're worried about, then I wouldn't recommend this armor. If you don't really care, then this is a pretty good one. Moving on from that, we're going to go over to one that I've talked about a lot on this channel, and I kind of have a few things to say about it. So if you guys have watched any of my videos before, I've kind of talked about how I like this AVS trade for the shampoos and these right here. I don't want to say that word because I feel like I'm not saying it right. Anyways, I've always talked about how I like this trade because I like the AVS. It offers stomach and thorax protection. It's really light, 8.7 kilograms. It has super high armor points at 70. I've always liked using this armor when I'm running class 4. The problem is now that shampoo has shot up, as we mentioned before, it's sitting around 22k. Sometimes it gets even higher than that. This rig comes out to around 150 to 200k to run it, and that is absolutely insane for a class 4. In my opinion, I think a class 4 should be no more than like 100 to 120k, because at that point you're getting into class 5 territory, and you might as well just get a class 5. So I would say only use this AVS if for whatever reason the shampoos tank and they're sitting at like 10k, then this would be an awesome trade. This one's pretty good. You just got to keep an eye on the price of these. If you're crafting the shampoo, it just makes more sense to sell them on the flea market, unfortunately. But if you don't care about all that, I would highly recommend the AVS if you can get it for a good price. Moving on, we've got the M1's brother over here, the M2. This isn't one that I really use all too often, but it is a really good rig. The benefit of this one is the fact that it is a 4x4 size, and what you get inside of it it's not really a good min-max type of rig. So here you got your 4x4. If you pick this up and you're trying to min-max, you only get 2 extra slots. So honestly, people don't really take this one a lot, and you'll typically get it back on insurance. So that is the big thing that it has going for it. It has 60 armor points. The modifiers aren't bad. Covers stomach and thorax, and it's only 7 kilograms. So it's super light. Very good rig. If you're worried about getting things back on insurance, this is one that you should look into running. Now, for the trade, sometimes it's kind of a pain to get these things for pretty cheap. These round glasses go up to 20-30k sometimes, but if you can get them for like 15k or less, it's worth it in my opinion. These Kiver face shields right here, these things sometimes go for a lot of money also. But if they're around 10k, I would suggest doing that. If these face shields are very expensive, you can go over to Ragman and he has a trade for a chainlet. So if we go over to the Kiver face shield, sorry, not the Kiver, the Colpack face shield. We go over to Ragman, we can see that you can trade one chainlet for this face shield. And as we all know, chainlets are super cheap. So you can buy them 6-7k, get your 3 face shields, and then get your round glasses, and you will have a class 4 armored rig that you'll probably get back on insurance most of the time for very cheap. You can get this thing between 50 to 80k, and if you get it on the low end, it is a huge bang for buck rig, and I highly recommend you guys check this one out. We're gonna go off track a little bit. This one's kind of an honorable mention, but not really an honorable mention. This is the tried and true rat rig, the 6B3TM. If you guys don't know about this, this is probably going to be your ultimate budget armored rig. It is a class 4. The downside is only 40 armor points, but the upside is you will almost 100% guaranteed always get this back on insurance. What sucks about it is the inventory space is very small. It's not crazy. But like I said before, you will get this thing back on insurance 99.999% of the time. The good thing about that is if you get a bunch of them back on insurance and they're all destroyed, you can go over here and trade 4 destroyed ones for a brand new one, and you'll be good to go. So they run for about 70k right here from Ragman, super cheap. But if you go down, he also has a trade for it. And as I mentioned before, the chainlets are super cheap, 6-7k. Go grab yourself a teapot for 30k roughly, and you'll get it for much cheaper than what he just sells it for straight cash. Once you get more towards the mid-wipe phase of the game, these become kind of obsolete and they're not very good anymore. But if you're struggling, if you're broke, if you don't have money, this is what I would recommend you guys do, because essentially once you buy enough of them and insure enough of them, you're just going to have an endless supply of these things, and it's basically free to run them. All right, so that is going to do it for class 4. We're going to hop over to proper real quick, take a little detour for class 5. Now at proper level 3, you unlock the trade for the Karun, but at level 4, you can just buy it straight for 178k. But we're mainly going to be focusing on this trade. So the Karun is a class 5 armor, offers thorax and stomach. It weighs 9.8 kilograms, so not too crazy, but a little heavy. 45 armor points, which isn't all that great, but for the price you're paying for a class 5, it's not too bad. And most of the time, this is another one of those armors that you're going to get back on insurance. If somebody kills you and they zero this thing out, chances are they're not going to take it out of raid because it is just not worth the price per slot. Unless the guy that came in was running naked, he's taking your armor. I'm sorry. Anyways, this is probably going to be the first class 5 armor that you guys have access to. I believe proper level 3 is like level 28 or 27, something like that. So it's super early on and you can get this thing. The barter is going to be for 4 diaries. And usually these things hover around 40k, but before I started recording this video, I saw them drop all the way down to 16k. I don't know why, but every now and again they will drop super cheap. As you can see, I bought a few of them right here. I've got 5, and I'm going to go ahead and use that and get myself a Karun. So if you want a little intro into class 5, this is probably going to be the best place to start because this is going to be the first one that you have access to. This is a decent armor, but it's definitely not meta or the best or anything like that. So just keep that in mind. It has low armor points. It will definitely save your life, but again, with the low armor points, I wouldn't count on this thing saving your life all the time. But by trading 4 of the diaries for it, you are definitely going to get it a lot cheaper than you would if you just bought it straight from proper. So I would highly recommend not buying it straight and just doing the trade. All right, so we're going to jump back over to Ragman where we'll spend the rest of our time, and we're going to move on down to this Bagari rig. I touched on this briefly in one of my previous videos. The key here with this thing is going to be that you only barter for this rig if you are crafting the Cordura and the Fleece. As I said before, 1 Cordura crafting in the hideout costs about 8k, one fleece costs about 9. So when you put it all together and you craft all of the cordura and craft all of the fleece, and then you just buy these AWLs, you're looking at slightly over 100k for a class 5 armored rig. Now the downside with this one is the armor points are kind of low at 55, and it is very heavy at 13 kilograms. The modifiers aren't terrible, but the movement speed is kind of up there at -10, but it does cover thorax and stomach, and the inside of this thing is absolutely huge. You got two 2x2 slots. I mean, this thing is just massive in comparison to its size. It is a 4x4. So again, the bigger the rig is, the less likely somebody is going to take it. But this being a class 5, people will probably take it. So I wouldn't count on that like I would on the 6B3T or whatever, the rat rig. But I've been running this one a lot. I really like it. It sucks that it's heavy. For as cheap as it is for a class 5, just over 100k, it's not bad. All right, so moving on from the Bagari, we're gonna come over here to the Fort. So this armor is obviously a class 5, but it has a very high armor point, and that's going to be 80. This thing covers the thorax and the stomach, but again, this one is very heavy at 13.5 kilograms. Ragman sells it straight for 228k, but if you come down here to the trade, you can get it for a lot cheaper. So if you buy all of these things off the flea, you're looking at around 180k to 200k, but sometimes you can pick up these manuals from Fence for super cheap, like under 5k, and that just brings your price down even more. So this is a decent armor for the price. It's definitely on the more expensive side for a class 5, but you do get the 80 armor points, and obviously because it's not ceramic, it repairs decent. The modifiers aren't too bad, it's just super heavy. I don't run this one too much, but I'm thinking about kind of starting to use it a little bit more just because it's a pretty good bang for buck for what you get. Overall, I'd say it's a decent buy if you can get it around 180k or less. Moving on from that, we've got the Gen 4 IOTV. So this used to be the absolute king of the game, this one, and the one that offers arm protection. At the moment, it's kind of expensive at the 7GP barter. You're looking at between 150 to 200k depending on where these things are sitting at, but it's roughly the same price as the Fort. The only downside is the fact that it only has 65 armor points, so 15 less than the Fort, and it is 13 kilograms lighter than the Fort, but is also still very heavy. Thorax and stomach protection, again, this is a decent buy if you can find these GP coins for pretty cheap on the market, or if you just pull them out of the raid, throw them in your junk box and hold on to them until you get enough. I would highly recommend running this armor. And finally, moving on from the Gen 4, we're going to go over to one of my personal favorites, which is going to be the Giselle, or Gazelle, however you want to say it. So downside to this one is it is a ceramic armor, so you're probably only going to get 1 or 2 uses out of it, but it is class 5. It is very light at 8.9 kilograms in comparison to the other class 5s. The modifiers are really good. It covers the thorax and the stomach. And depending on the time of day, you can typically get this thing around 100k. The price of these gold chains fluctuates tremendously. I mean, sometimes they're at 30, sometimes they're at 40. If you get them cheap enough, I would go ahead and pick them up. If you find them in raid, I would grab them and bring them out with you. You can also get these coffee beans for usually less than 20k. I've seen them as low as 12 recently. If they're that low, definitely grab them and do this trade. Usually I get these for around 100k. They're good for 1 or 2 raids, and 100k for a class 5 armor is not bad at all. And typically people will not pick these up because they know it's ceramic, and especially if they've completely fried it, they will not be taking it usually. So that's going to do it. That is going to be 13 armors that you should be using at this point in the wipe. We're at about mid wipe right now. We are definitely past the fresh wipe stage. That's going to be the things that I recommend using. If you look down here, you can kind of see the stuff that I use. I've got some found and raid stuff. We might do an updated video for late wipe, but for right now, this is the kind of stuff that I'm using for mid wipe. So hopefully you guys found this video helpful. If you did, drop a comment, let me know down below. If you know of any other good armor barters, buys, trades, whatever at level 3 traders, be sure to let me know down in the comments. But other than that, that's all I got for you guys today, and I'll see you in the next one.